Things set up and ready to go for my episode of The Cut. Give me a second so that I can get everything ready. Still have to get the talking points and everything as well, which usually I have ready, but I'm falling a little bit behind tonight. That's fine. I believe I've got everything. A little disoriented. This week has been pretty hectic, but I am pretty sure that I've got all my talking points set up and ready for the show. I could be wrong though because I am not. I'm here, but I'm not all there at the moment. If you know what I'm talking about, so it's kind of like gathering all of it together. Now, this week I want to go over a little bit that I left out when it came to the Great Stink of London. These were actually some pretty interesting facts that were or that are actually left out of of history that I wanted to cover. So I'm not going to go any further into that because I want to do it with an actual decent introduction and everything before I do that. First, I got to check the audio and make sure everything is working. Yeah, here we go. We've got actually D Live working like it's supposed to. Hit refresh on Rumble so that I can see it. Rumble sounds good. Hit refresh on YouTube. I also have to go into YouTube and make sure that the stream is going to its proper playlist. So first I will make sure it's running and it's in working order. Sounds good on YouTube and put it in its proper playlist, which is live streams. And just so you guys know, later on, what I usually do is I run this back through as 15-minute clips on both Rumble and YouTube. You can check them out after or at a later time. I also put them on my 8-hour blocks on my regular channel, which is Roger Hanson, and that's only on YouTube, not on Rumble, because the playlists for Rumble are just insane. So I don't even want to attempt doing that. And the reason why I do that is because eventually I want all my content to be available for me to where I can do like uh, 24 hour, 7 days a week live streams, 24/7 live streams. So you can catch them in there on my main account on both. Well, or you can catch them not on both, but just on YouTube as 8-hour blocks with other content that I do have available. So everything seems to be running. I do have this going not only on D Live, Rumble, and YouTube, but I have it also available on Twitch as well as on Kick. So if you guys want to watch this stuff on those channels as well, you can find me there. So with that, I will just go ahead and get with the show. So let me go silent, then I will do my introduction and I'll get on with it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Cut here on the wonderful world of weirdness. I'm Roger Hanson, and today I will be your host. I believe this is the 8th episode of The Cut. I'm not quite sure. It's like I said before I actually started doing the actual stream just here a second ago. That been kind of disoriented this week. I was lucky enough to get the talking points for the show. That's how disorganized I've been. But I have been getting things done. I've finished off another video series on another channel that I've been working on, my own personal channel, which is Roger Hansen on and Live with Roger Hansen on Rumble. Just regular Roger Hansen on YouTube. I've been doing Live with Roger Hansen, and I finally did the last stream with other people on there. I'll probably go in and do my final thoughts for that one because it's technically only the 11th episode, but I could probably break that down into an hour and a half for each of them because it's a 3 hour stream. But I don't know. It depends. I have all of my streams available on podcast if you guys want to check them out. And it's like I said before, I do have 15-minute videos that are coming out each week to where if you miss this live stream, you can see it again at a later time. So you're more than welcome to check those out. Now, with that being said, I think we need to get to the cut. Now, I brought up some talking points earlier about the Great Stink of London, and there was other parts about that time period that I feel need to be brought up as well because there was more than just the Great Stink that was going on that pertains to the situation. And some of it happened beforehand. Some of it happened during the time period, and a little bit afterwards. Now, with that time period, you got to understand this was right during the time of the Great Fire of London, where it burned down London, and they had to rebuild it. So there was a lot of stuff that was going on during that time period, and with that's one of for me that's one of the most fascinating parts of history that I've found because there's a lot of information that hasn't really been said pertaining to that time period. So I'd like to get into that and add some of those parts of history onto my stream. So that's the reason why I'm doing this because I really do enjoy going through a lot of this historical stuff and pulling up tidbits of information that, like I've said during this whole stream, seems to be like cut from history, So with that, I'm gonna start talking about what's this is all about. So here we go. The Great Conduit of London was one of the most remarkable civic engineering achievements of the medieval world, though it is often overshadowed today by later developments in urban water supply. Conceived and built in the early 14th century, the Great Conduit was designed to bring fresh water from sources outside the city into its bustling heart. At a time when London was growing rapidly in population and influence, the need for cleaner and reliable supply of water became pressing. Wells were easily contaminated. Streams and smaller rivers within the city were fouled by human waste and industrial activity. And the river Thames itself, while central to life in the capital, was increasingly polluted. The creation of the Great Conduit represented not only a technical achievement but also a symbolic one, demonstrating the determination of the civic authorities to invest in the well-being and prestige of London. To grasp the importance of the Great Conduit, one must first picture London at the beginning of the 14th century. The city was the largest in England, with tens of thousands of inhabitants, and it served as a center for commerce, governance, and culture. Its markets drew goods from across Europe and beyond, and its population was steadily expanding as migrants arrived seeking opportunity. Yet this growth brought severe challenges in sanitation and infrastructure. The reliance on shallow wells and water drawn from Thames exposed residents to frequent outbreaks of disease. Industrial activities such as tanning and dyeing dumped the waste into waterways, and with no organized sewage system, the health risks were considerable. Water, the most basic necessity of life, was being increasingly difficult to obtain in a pure form. The decision to build the Great Conduit was both political and visionary. Civic leaders recognized that a reliable water supply would not only improve daily life but also safeguard the reputation and prosperity of the city. The source chosen was a natural spring at Tyburn, located outside the walls of London to the west. The spring produced water of notable clarity and purity, far removed from the filth of the urban environment. The challenge was to transport this water over land and underground into the city center, a distance of several miles across uneven ground. Work on the system began in the second decade of the 14th century during the reign of King Edward II, and records indicate that the project was underway by the year 1315. Financing was provided by the City of London Corporation, which oversaw civic works and infrastructure. The method of construction reflected the ingenuity of medieval engineers. Trenches were dug to house wooden pipes, which were often made from hollowed out tree barks or tree trunks, joined end to end. In some areas, lead pipes were also used, though wood was far more common due to its availability and lower cost. Chambers built of stone, sometimes called cisterns or heads, were constructed along the route to regulate flow, provide access for maintenance, and store water. The water eventually reached Cheapside, the commercial and social hub of medieval London. Here the authorities constructed a large stone structure, monumental in appearance, which came to be known simply as the Great Conduit. From this central point, water could be drawn by citizens. The design allowed water to be collected in pitchers, buckets, and barrels, and the site became a focal point for daily life in the city. Markets, guild halls, and shops surrounded Cheapside, ensuring the Great Conduit was always busy with activity. Over time, the system expanded. Additional conduits were constructed to carry water to other parts of the city, including Cornhill, Gracechurch Street, and Fleet Street. These expansions reflected both population growth and the desire to extend the benefits of the water supply beyond the immediate center. The conduits were not simply pipes hidden underground, but included prominent stone structures at their termini, which became well-known landmarks. People came not only to fetch water, but also to socialize and gather news. In many ways, the conduit acted as both practical utilities and civic monuments. Access to the water was in theory open to all, though in practice much of it was distributed through water carriers. These individuals, sometimes called cobs or conduit bearers, filled barrels or pails at the conduit houses and carried them to households, businesses, or taverns for a fee. Thus, an economic system grew around the conduits, providing employment while also ensuring that those unable or unwilling to fetch their own water could still benefit from the supply. The conduits also had symbolic importance. During major civic or royal celebrations, water might be allowed to flow freely, and on special occasions the conduits were even made to run with wine. At the coronation of King Edward IV in the 15th century, for example, Cheapside's great conduit was filled with wine as part of the festivals, a vivid reminder of its role as both utility and civic stage. The maintenance of the conduit was an ongoing task. Wooden pipes were subject to rot, leaks, and blockage, and chambers had to be cleaned of sediment. Civic authorities employed wardens of the conduits to oversee their condition and ensure repairs were carried out. Despite these efforts, the system was not immune to problems. The water supply could be interrupted by changes in land use at Tyborn or by encroachment upon the pipes. Farmers or landowners along the route sometimes tampered with the system, and disputes arose over rights to the spring water. These challenges required continual negotiation and vigilance by the city authorities. As London grew through the 15th and 16th centuries, the limitation of the conduit system became apparent. The original flow from the Tyburn could no longer meet the demand of a swelling population. Further sources had to be tapped, and additional conduits were built. Yet even with these improvements, supply often lagged behind need. Wealthier households and institutions sometimes constructed private connections to the conduits, diverting water for their own use, a practice that caused disputes and sometimes deprived poor citizens of access. The dissolution of the monasteries in the 6th century also affected the conduit system. Many of the lands through which the conduits passed had been under the ownership and supervision of religious houses, and their sudden transfer into private hands created new complications. Civic authorities were forced to negotiate with private landowners to maintain the right of way for the pipes and springs. Despite these difficulties, the conduits remained an essential part of London's infrastructure, and their upkeep continued to be a matter of civic priority. The conduits also played a role in times of crisis. During the outbreaks of plague, clean water was a precious resource, and the conduits were crucial in helping to maintain basic sanitation. However, during the Great Fire of London in 1666, the limitation of the system became glaringly apparent. The flow of water from the conduits was utterly insufficient to combat the massive inflagration or conflagration, the massive conflagration that swept unchecked through much of the city. The inadequacy of the conduits in the face of such disaster underscored the need for more advanced and capacious water supply systems. By the 17th and 18th century, private water companies began to emerge, installing pumps and more advanced piping systems that could deliver water directly to households. These systems drew primarily from the Thames, often with mixed results in terms of water quality, and they could provide far larger volumes than the medieval conduits. The old conduit houses gradually fell into disuse. Their pipes decayed or were deliberately removed, and the once proud stone structures was dismantled. By the late 18th century, the great conduit at Cheapside had been demolished to make way for modern urban improvements, and the system that had served London for centuries was consigned to history. Yet the legacy of the Great Conduit endures. It represents one of the earliest attempts in Northern Europe to create a centralized, publicly managed water supply system for a major city. It demonstrated the capacity of medieval civic authorities to plan and execute large-scale infrastructure projects, and it underscored the vital connection between public health, civic pride, and urban growth. For hundreds of years, the conduits provided clean water to countless Londoners, supporting daily life, commerce, and celebrations. Fragments of the system have occasionally been uncovered during excavations, including sections of the wooden pipes, which provide rare insight into the engineering methods of the time. The memory of the conduits also survive in written records, civic documents, and historical accounts. For historians of medieval and early modern urban life, the Great Conduit serves as an invaluable case study in the relationship between technology, society, and governance. More broadly, the story of the Great Conduit of London illustrates enduring truths about human civilization. Cities cannot thrive without infrastructure, and the hidden systems that deliver water, remove waste, and sustain daily life are as important as palaces or cathedrals. The Great Conduit reminds us that behind the grandeur of medieval London lay a network of pipes and chambers, maintained with difficulty yet essential to the life of the city. It was both a triumph and a limitation, a bold attempt to solve the problem of clean water that ultimately gave way to more advanced systems, but which, in its own time, was revolutionary. In the end, the Great Conduit was far more than a piece of plumbing. It was a civic monument, a symbol of collective effort, and a practical necessity that helped London grow into one of the great cities of the world. Though the stone structures are gone and the wooden pipes have rotted away, its influence continues in the very ideas that access to clean water is a responsibility of civic society, and the great conduit of London was the foundation upon which later generations built the modern water systems we take for granted today, and it deserves recognition as one of the great achievements of medieval urban engineering. The story of Crossness is inseparable from the great transformation of 19th century London. By the middle of the capital of the British Empire was one of the largest and most powerful cities on earth, with a population exceeding 2 million people and a network of trade and influence that spanned the globe. Yet beneath the veneer of imperial grandeur lay a crisis of filth and disease that threatened the very life of the city. For decades, Londoners had relied on cesspits, rudimentary drains, and the River Thames itself as repositories for human and industrial waste. As the city grew, so too did the volume of effluent, effluent, until by the 1840s and 50s the Thames was little more than an open sewer. The result was not only unbearable stench, but also deadly epidemics of cholera and typhoid, which claimed tens of thousands of lives. The crisis reached its infamous peak in the summer of 1858, known forever as the Great Stink. That year, an unusually hot spell baked the banks of the Thames, concentrating the foul odors of untreated sewage that poured endlessly into the river. The stench was so overwhelming that members of Parliament could barely sit in the Palace of Westminster, which stood directly above the tainted waters. Sheets soaked of chloride or lime were hung over windows in a futile attempt to mask the odor, yet business nearly ground to a halt. The Great Stink shocked the political class into recognizing that action could no longer be delayed. It was clear that London required a comprehensive sewer system on a scale never before attempted, and the man who would design and oversee it was Joseph Bazalgette. Bazalgette, the chief engineer of the Metropolitan Board of Works, was a figure of extraordinary vision and perseverance. A civil engineer by training, he possessed both the technical expertise and the administrative acumen to manage a project of unparalleled size and complexity. His plan was to construct a vast network of intercepting sewers that would capture waste before it could reach the Thames, carry it downstream, and discharge it far from the center of London. The system would involve more than 100,000 miles of street sewers, feeding into nearly 80 miles of main interceptors. These immense underground arteries, built of millions of bricks, would convey sewage eastward away from the densely populated heart of the city. At the end of this system, Bazalgette planned two great outfall works, one on the north bank of the Thames at Beckton and the other on the south bank at Crossness. It was at these sites that the sewage collected by the interceptors would be lifted, stored, and ultimately discharged into the river on the outgoing tide, reducing the risk of it washing back into the city. Of these two sites, Crossness, on the southern bank of the Thames in what is now the London borough of Bexley, became the most celebrated, thanks both to its sheer scale and to the architectural grandeur of its engine house. Construction at Crossness began in the 1860s and represented the culmination of Bazalgette's vision. The site required the creation of massive storage reservoirs, each capable of holding millions of gallons of sewage, and a pump station equipped with colossal beam engines to lift the waste from the lower level intercepting sewers into these reservoirs. The engines themselves, designed by the firm of James Watt and Company, were among the largest and most powerful ever built at the time. Four of them, each named after members of the royal family: Victoria, Prince Consort, Albert, Edward, and Alexandra, stood as titans of the steam age, capable of lifting tons of effluent with every stroke. Yet Crossness was not merely functional. The engine house was designed with a degree of architectural flourish unusual for an industrial site, a testament of Victorian confidence in engineering as a civilizing force. Constructed in the Romanesque style, the building featured soaring arches, intricate brickwork, and ironwork of extraordinary beauty. Inside, the cast iron columns and galleries were decorated with ornate patterns, painted in bright colors and gilded, transforming the pumping station into what has often been described as a cathedral of sewage. The decision to invest such artistry in a utilitarian structure reflected both civic pride and a desire to elevate public works to the level of national monuments. The operation of Crossness began in 1865, and the impact on London was profound. For the first time, the city possessed a systematic means of removing its waste and reducing the contamination of the Thames. The link between contaminated water and cholera had been established earlier by John Snow, though not fully accepted until the late 19th century. And Bazalgette's sewers helped to eliminate the outbreaks of waterborne diseases that had so often devastated London. Mortality rates declined, and the overall health of the population improved dramatically. The psychological effect was equally significant. Londoners could at last breathe easier, and the city's reputation as a modern metropolis was secured. Crossness continued to serve as a vital part of London's sewage system for more than a century. The engines worked tirelessly, pumping millions upon millions of gallons of sewer eastward. Over time, as technology advanced and the original beam engines were supplemented and eventually replaced with electrical pumps, or over time, as technology advanced, the beam engines were supplanted and eventually replaced by electrical pumps. Yet the site retained its importance within the overall network. The grandeur of the engine house gradually faded as grime accumulated and paint peeled, but the basic structure endured. By the mid-20th century, however, changes in sewage treatment and the expansion of London rendered the old pumping stations obsolete. Crossness was decommissioned in the 1950s, and its once mighty engines were left to rust in silence. For decades, the site languished, its architectural splendor obscured by decay, its role in the salvation of Victorian London largely forgotten by the public. Yet among historians and engineers, the significance of Crossness was never in doubt, and efforts eventually began to preserve and restore it. In the 1980s, a group of dedicated volunteers formed the Crossness Engines Trust, determined to save the site from complete ruin. Through years of painstaking labor, they began to clean, repair, and restore the engines and the building. What they uncovered astonished even seasoned experts. Beneath layers of grime lay ironwork of dazzling intricacy, painted in vivid red, greens, blues, and golds. The restoration revealed the full glory of Victorian industrial design, reminded the world that the Victorians saw no contradiction between utility and beauty. Today, Crossness stands not only as a monument to Joseph Bazalgette's genius, but also as a rare survivor of the great age of steam engineering. Visitors can walk among the restored galleries, gaze upon the immense beam engines, and marvel at the artistry lavished upon a structure built to deal with human waste. It is a place where history, engineering, and art converge, offering profound insight into the values and achievements of the 19th century. The story of Crossness also carries broader lessons. It demonstrates the capacity of societies to confront existential challenges through innovation, investment, and collective effort. Faced with epidemics and political paralysis, Victorian London did not collapse, but instead rose to the occasion. creating infrastructure that safeguarded public health for generations. Crossness reminds us that even the most unglamorous tasks, such as the disposal of sewage, can be imbued with dignity and grandeur when approached with vision. Moreover, Crossness embodies the paradoxes of industrial civilization. It is both a place of filth and of beauty, of necessity and of aspiration. The same engines that lifted sewers were celebrated as marvels of design. The same river that carried away waste also bore ships laden with goods from across the empire. The Victorians understood that infrastructure was the backbone of their society. They were willing to invest in it with a seriousness that commands respect even today. Though Crossness is now a heritage site rather than a working station, its relevance endures in an era when cities around the world grapple with the challenges of urban growth, sanitation, and sustainability. The lesson is clear: clean water and effective waste management are not luxuries, but foundations of civilization. Without them, even the mightiest cities will falter. With them, societies can flourish. Crossness is more than just an old pumping station on the banks of the Thames. It is a symbol of the Victorian will to master nature through engineering, a testament to the link between public health and public works, and a reminder that progress often depends upon investments that are hidden beneath our feet. The Cathedral of Sewage, as it has been called, deserves its place along the great monuments of the age, where it speaks not only of pipes and engines, but of lives saved, diseases prevented, and a city renewed. The Voynich manuscript is perhaps the most enigmatic book in the world, a work that has fascinated scholars, linguistics, cryptographers, and dreamers for centuries. Its pages are filled with an unknown script, indecipherable words, and strange illustrations that defy simple categorization. The manuscript has resisted every attempt at translation, leaving generations of researchers puzzled. Its story is not only about a single book, but also about the human need to search for meaning in mystery. The manuscript came to the attention of the modern world in the early part of the 20th century, when a rare book dealer by the name of Wilfrid Voynich acquired it in Italy in the year 1912. It was found in the library of the Villa Mondragone, a Jesuit college near Rome. Voynich, who specialized in rare and unusual texts, immediately realized that he had stumbled upon something extraordinary. The book was filled with hundreds of pages of strange script that did not resemble any known alphabet, along with colorful illustrations of plants, astronomical diagrams, and human figures. He brought it to the wider scholarly community, and from that moment forward the manuscript bore his name. Yet the history of the manuscript extends much further back. Radiocarbon dating conducted in the early 21st century revealed that the parchment on which it was written dates to the early 15th century, placing its creation in late medieval Europe. The manuscript likely passed through many hands before reaching the Jesuit library, where Voynich discovered it. Evidence suggests that in the 17th century the book was in the possession of George Barish, a Prague alchemist who puzzled over its strange writings. It was later sent to Athanasius Kircher, a Jesuit scholar known for his interest in obscure languages and codes. Letters from this period mention the book as an oddity that no one could decipher. Eventually it entered Jesuit collections, where it remained until Voynich's discovery. The manuscript itself is composed of over 200 pages of vellum, though some leaves are missing. The text is written in a flowing hand that suggests it is not a mere hoax or random jumble, but rather the work of someone who had fluency in the script. The alphabet consists of around 20 distinct characters, repeated in patterns that resemble natural language. Words appear to follow consistent structures, with some words repeating frequently and others appearing only rarely. This has convinced many researchers that the text encodes an actual language, or a cipher, rather than being meaningless. The illustrations are as perplexing as the writing. Many pages depict plants, but the plants do not match known species. Some resemble composites of different plants, while others are entirely fantastical. There are astronomical and astrological diagrams showing stars, suns, moons, and zodiac symbols, sometimes accompanied by strange writing around circular forms. One section shows dozens of nude women bathing in green liquid, connected by pipes and tubes, as though part of some alchemical or medical process. Another section appears to contain recipes, with short passages of text accompanied by star-like symbols. Scholars have categorized the manuscript into several sections: botanical, astronomical, balneological or bathing, cosmological, pharmaceutical, and recipes. The mystery of the script has drawn the greatest attention. From the moment Voynich revealed the manuscript, cryptographers began to attempt its decipherment. During the Second World War, American and British codebreakers, who had cracked the most difficult enemy ciphers, turned their skills to the Voynich manuscript. Yet even experts who had broken the code of Enigma and, Purple could make no progress. The text stubbornly resisted every effort. Part of the difficulty is that the script does not match any known alphabet. While it has about 20 distinct signs, these signs are written with smooth, elegant strokes, giving the impression of a practiced scribe. The words average about 5 characters in length, and certain words repeat frequently in patterns that resemble grammar. Yet no one has been able to identify what language, if any, lies beneath the script. Some argue that it could be a cipher encoding a known language, while others believe it represents an entire invented tongue. Over the years, countless theories have been proposed. Some suggest that the manuscript was the work of medieval alchemists or natural philosophers attempting to record secret knowledge in code. Others believe it is a treatise of medicine, perhaps focusing on women's health, given the illustration of bathing women. Some see it as an astrological guide, connecting plants and healing practices with the stars. A more romantic theory holds that it is the work of a genius or eccentric who created an entire new language and alphabet meant only for themselves. There is also the theory that the Voynich manuscript is an elaborate hoax. Some argue that it was created in the 15th or 16th century to fool wealthy patrons who were willing to pay for rare and mysterious knowledge. The apparent consistency of the text, however, makes this theory difficult to sustain. To generate more than 200 pages of pseudo-language with consistent patterns would require immense effort and sophistication, raising the question of why anyone would go to such lengths merely to deceive. The modern era has brought new tools to the study of the manuscript. Computer algorithms have analyzed the patterns of the text, comparing them to known languages. Some studies suggest that the statistical properties of the text resemble natural human languages more than random gibberish. Others have tried to match the words with specific languages, from Hebrew to Nahuatl to Chinese, but none of these identifications have held up to scrutiny. Machine learning methods have been applied, yielding tantalizing hints, but no definitive solutions. The illustrations, too, have been studied in detail. Botanists have tried to identify the plants with little success. Some appear to be composites of known species, while others are unlike anything that grows on Earth. Astronomers have examined the star diagrams, noting that some correspond to real constellations, while others do not. The bathing women have been interpreted as allegories or alchemical transformation, or as depictions of medical practices involving water. The pipes and baths could represent the body or perhaps a symbolic vision of the cosmos. Despite centuries of effort, the manuscript remains unread. This enduring mystery is part of its allure. Each generation of scholars believes that they may be the one to unlock the code, only to find the solution slipping from their grasp. The Voynich manuscript has thus become a mirror in which we see reflected our own desires for knowledge, our own projections of meaning onto the unknown. The cultural impact of the manuscript is profound. It has appeared in novels, films, and popular culture as a symbol of mystery and hidden knowledge. Writers have imagined it as a magical grimoire, a lost work of genius, or even a message from extraterrestrials. The manuscript inspires the imagination precisely because it resists explanation. In an age when so much can be decoded, categorized, and explained, the Voynich manuscript stands as a reminder that not all mysteries yield to reason. If the manuscript is not merely a puzzle, it is also a material artifact, a window into the culture of 15th century Europe. The vellum, inks, and pigments provide information about medieval technologies of bookmaking. The style of the drawing, the style of the drawings, though strange, share features with other manuscripts of the period. The fact that such work was produced at all tells us something about the intellectual ferment of the time, when scholars and alchemists explored the boundaries of science, magic, and language. In recent years, the Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library at Yale University, which houses the Voynich manuscript, has made high-quality digital scans available online. This has opened the text to a global community of researchers and enthusiasts. Thousands of people around the world now study the pages, advancing new theories and analysis. The democratization of access has only deepened the fascination with the work, as amateurs and professionals alike engage with its mysteries. The future of Voynich studies may depend on continued interdisciplinary collaborations. Cryptographers or cryptographers, linguistics, historians, and computer scientists all bring different perspectives. Perhaps one day the code will be broken and the contents of the manuscript revealed, or perhaps it will remain forever obscure, its meaning lost to time. Either outcome carries significance. If the text is decoded, it will enrich our understanding of medieval thought. If it remains a mystery, it will continue to inspire wonder. The story of the Voynich manuscript is thus not only about a single book, but about the human spirit. It embodies our drive to uncover secrets, to make sense of the unknown, to believe that meaning lies hidden just beneath our grasp. It reminds us that knowledge is never complete, that even in a world of science and technology, there remains enigmas that resist resolution. In this sense, the Voynich manuscript is not just a puzzle, but a parable, a story about our relationship to mystery itself. The manuscript has endured for more than 6 centuries, passed from alchemists to Jesuits to modern scholars, always carrying with it the aura of the inexplicable. It may yet endure for centuries more, still unread, still provoking debate and imagination. Its pages whisper across time, inviting us to listen, to speculate, to dream, and perhaps that is its greatest gift, not the knowledge it conceals, but the sense of wonder it inspires. Among the most enduring theories concerning the authorship of the Voyage manuscript is that it may have been created by the English friar and scholar Roger Bacon. Bacon lived in the 13th century and was known for his interest in alchemy, optics, and natural philosophy. He wrote extensively on scientific and mystical subjects and was fascinated with the idea of hidden knowledge. Advocates of the Bacon hypothesis point to the manuscript's enigmatic content, its complex diagrams, and its apparent purpose as a compendium of secret knowledge, as consistent with Bacon's intellectual pursuits. They suggest that the unusual script might have been a cipher designed to protect his ideas from prying eyes in an age when radical thought could be dangerous. Yet there is little direct evidence linking Bacon to the manuscript, and the carbon dating of the volume, or vellum, to the early 15th century postdates his death by more than 100 years, making this theory historically unlikely. Nevertheless, the association endures, in part because Bacon represents the archetype of the secretive medieval genius whose knowledge was centuries ahead of its time. Another theory credits the English mathematician, astrologer, and occultist John Dee with the manuscript's creation. Dee lived during the 16th century and served as an observer to Queen Elizabeth I. His collected an enormous library of books of mathematics, alchemy, divination, and the occult. Dee, along with his associate Edward Kelly, claimed to communicate with angels through a practice they called scrying. Supporters of the Dee theory argue that the manuscript could be an alchemical treatise disguised as a coded work, intended to protect knowledge while still conveying it to a select few. The elaborate diagrams and esoteric content resonate with what is known about Dee's work, particularly his interest in astrology, the combination of magic and science, and the creation of unique symbolic symbols. However, the connection remains speculative, as there is no concrete evidence that Dee or Kelly ever possessed the manuscript. Some scholars have suggested that the manuscript might have been the work of an unknown or anonymous alchemist or scholar in continental Europe, possibly in northern Italy or Bohemia, where the book was documented in the 17th century. This theory emphasizes the style of the illustrations and the manuscript's material composition as consistent with 15th century European craftsmanship. The botanical drawings, though peculiar, show an understanding of plant structure, while the astronomical diagrams indicate knowledge of the skies, suggesting the creator was educated and skilled in multiple fields. The identity of this individual may be lost to history, and the manuscript may remain the only surviving testament to their intellect. Another perspective considers the manuscript as a work of linguistic experimentation, or even early scientific fiction. In this view, the text may have been intended as a linguistic or philosophical exercise, a creative experiment in encoding information and creating meaning. The writer may have developed a unique script and vocabulary to explore how symbols interact with thoughts, perception, and communication. This theory does not require the manuscript to serve a practical purpose or convey practical knowledge, but rather frames it as an early form of cognitive exploration, anticipating ideas in a semiotic artificial intelligence and constructed language and constructive languages centuries before such fields formerly existed. A more radical suggestion posits that the manuscript could have been intended as a medieval guide, particularly focusing on women's health and reproduction. This frequent depiction of bathing women in the connection and the connection of plants and fluids to the human body have led some to interpret the manuscript as a compendium of gynecological knowledge or a guide to herbal remedies. In medieval Europe, such knowledge was often passed orally or kept secret, particularly when it involved reproductive health. Encoding this information in a secret script would have provided both protection and exclusivity, allowing only a select audience to benefit from the insights. Some theorists have proposed that the Voynich manuscript may even have been influenced by esoteric or mystical traditions, including Kabbalistic, alchemical, or Hermetic thought. The text could have been intended to encode not only practical knowledge, but also philosophical, spiritual, or mystical concepts, accessible only to those trained to interpret its symbols. This would explain the mixture of botanical, astronomical, and bathing imagery, as well as the recurrent motifs of interconnectedness and transformation. In this context, the manuscript becomes not simply a book, but a meditation on the structure of the universe, the human body, and the relationship between knowledge and secrecy. Cryptographers, meanwhile, have explored the possibility that the manuscript contains a sophisticated cipher that hides information of immense value. Some have suggested that it could encode natural languages or language using a method that has yet to be discovered. Others have hypothesized that the manuscript employs a polyalphabetical cipher where symbols represent multiple letters depending on context, or a homophonic cipher where one character can encode several different sounds. Despite these efforts, no code-breaking method has conclusively succeeded, demonstrating both the complexity of the manuscript and the ingenuity of its creator. In addition to historical and linguistic analysis, modern technology has opened new avenues of research. High-resolution imagery has allowed scholars to study the ink, pigments, and brushstrokes, revealing the skill and the care in which the manuscript was created. Spectral analysis of the inks have shown that some pages contain mixture of iron gall, ink, and organic pigments, consistent with practices in 15th century Europe. Microscopic examination of the vellum indicates preparation techniques that would have required both expertise and patience. These material studies suggest that the manuscript was not a casual work, but a deliberate, carefully crafted artifact. Artificial intelligence and machine learning have also been applied in recent years. Algorithms have been used to analyze word patterns, character frequency, and structural repetition. These studies suggest that the text exhibits statistical properties consistent with natural languages, including predictability in words, sequences, and syntactic structure. Although AI has not deciphered the manuscript, these insights support the notion that it encodes meaningful content rather than being random signals or symbols. The mystery of the Voynich manuscript is heightened by the absence of any corroborating historical references. Unlike most medieval works, there are no copies, no translations, and no known cemetery or commentary by contemporaries. Aside from passing references by owners such as Behrisch or Kircher, this isolation raises questions about how widely known the manuscript was and whether it served a practical purpose or was intended as a private intellectual exercise. The allure of the manuscript lies not only in the challenge of deciphering, but also in the aesthetic and imaginative appeal of its illustrations. Each page draws the viewer into a world of unusual flora, cosmic diagrams, and symbolic imagery that seems both familiar and alien. It encourages careful observation, speculation, and interpretation, engaging both scientific and artistic sensibilities. The work exists at an intersection of art, science, and mysticism, making it a unique artifact of human creativity. The Voynich manuscript remains one of the most compelling mysteries of the pre-modern world. Its authors may be seen as genius. No, its author may be seen may have no, its author may have been a genius, a mystic, an alchemist, or an anonymous scholar whose identity is lost to history. Its content may encode practical knowledge, spiritual insight, linguistic experimentation, or a complex cipher yet to be solved. The manuscript continues to captivate the imagination of scholars and enthusiasts alike, demonstrating the enduring human fascination with the unknown, whether it is ever decoded or remains forever opaque. The Voynich manuscript exemplifies the power of mystery to inspire wonder, inquiry, and creativity across centuries. Its pages filled with strange text and evocative illustrations, continues to whisper questions that invite reflection on the limitation of knowledge, the possibilities of human ingenuity, and the enduring beauty of unexplained phenomena. All right, so let me cough after reading all of that, and then I can go ahead and say my final words. So I hope you guys did enjoy that. If you did, um, please like, subscribe, share, make comments. Love to hear your feedback. Love to hear what you have to say about the topics that were brought up. And like I said at the beginning of the stream, I'll say it again. We are on Rumble and YouTube and at the Wonderful World of Weirdness. If you guys want to check us out there, feel free to do so. And like I said, we aren't just doing the live streams. The video will be restreamed on at 15-minute videos for people who want to watch just shorter videos. We've created shorter videos so that you can hear little bits at a time, as well as going over and watching this again if you wish to. If you want to check us out on other platforms, you can check us out on DLive and at Kick as Roger_Hanson. Besides those two platforms, I am also on Twitch at Infamous 1969. You can check me out there as well. Now on, I believe, I may have missed one. I'm not quite sure. I said YouTube, Rumble, DLive, Kick, and Twitch. So you can check me out there. If you want to find me on Teams, you can find me at Roger Hanson. I've also got a community set up that I started today. Rather than using the groups they got, I set a community up for Live with Roger Hanson. You can check me out there as well. And on Minds, I am Roger_Hanson. I don't go on there very much, but you can find me there. I'm also on X at RogLOL1973. That's ROGLOL1973. And again, I'm on there, but I'm not on there all the time. So I will respond to you when I go and check everything out on there. It's just I don't know exactly when that will be. And I guess the best thing I can say is thank you for watching. I hope you guys have a good day, and I'll end this. Looks like Mark Edworthy finally followed me on DLive. It's about time. He's followed me on every single platform except for DLive. It's amazing that he actually did it. Good job, Mark Edworthy. And I believe that's all the comments, all of the actions that we've had to do. There ain't nobody that's made any comments in the comment section, so I guess we're done. And with that, I will end the show. And thank you guys again for watching. Later.